So welcome everybody, and let's just start with a quick bit of housekeeping, which is how to raise a hand, because at the moment we're all on one screen, but if more people do come in, we might go onto two screens. So if you go down to reactions at the bottom of your screen, you'll find a little yellow, you'll have various items, but one is raise hand, and you can put your hand up and then you can put it down again. So yeah, so that's it. See if you can try it out. See if you can put it up. But for those who are unfamiliar with this one, that's it. And then if you're, oh, I like the heart, Dino. And then if at a point you're trying to ask a question, I'm not noticing your hand waving, stick the yellow hand up and I will notice that. So, as it's, you know, questions are great. And we're going to have a great discussion. Oh, a celebration one as well. Thank you. So good. Okay. Who has a copy of my book? Yeah, quite a few people. Lovely. Brilliant. And so most of you are teachers, I think. Some of you are trainees. Who's an Alexander pupil? Who's not an Alexander teacher or trainee? Azeli and yes, Svenja and Gail. Lovely. Okay. And do you how much? I presume you know quite a bit about the technique, or are you? Would you put your hand up if you're really just beginning in it? Azeli, how are you in it? Where are you at?
I've had 10 or so lessons with somebody that used to train with you, I believe.
All right, who's that?
Maria, a Polish woman in Bristol.
Oh yes. So you'll be a bit familiar with my work.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And Gail, you will be as well, working with Valentin.
Yeah.
And Svenja, are you a bit familiar with my work?
Only through reading. I'm a movement shiatsu practitioner, and it's a friend of mine who, so I'm very interested in integrated movement. And yeah, but I have not had any Alexander technique training or anything like that.
Right. That's fine. You're welcome. Good. Lovely. Okay. So I'm going to talk for about 15-20 minutes or so, and then we'll open up into discussions. But if there's any point while I'm talking that you really want something clarified or you want to ask more questions, just stick up that yellow hand and we'll stop and discuss. Can everybody hear me all right? I've got my external mic on. Yeah. Anyone with hearing issues or English not so hot that need me to keep things a bit slow or slower? Martina?
No, I just have the question, where do I find that hand? I didn't get that.
All right, yes. If you go down to the bottom of your screen, you'll find a smiley face there, reactions.
No.
No, there should be there's a little row of icons somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mute, stop video, participants, chat, share screen, record, reactions. You meant that? Yeah. Okay.
Press on reactions. You'll get a choice.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you
for asking. Yeah.
Please bear with the non-native speakers.
Yes. Now, if I start to speed up, just wave at me and tell me to slow down again, please. Because I mean, I'm totally respect people who work in a language isn't their first language. I couldn't do it. So thank you for all speaking such good English. And and if anything you're not sure about in German, you know, just again stop and ask. Yeah. So a little about me to start with. I had a very active childhood, running everywhere, jumping everywhere, turning cartwheels and dancing, and wasn't good enough to be a professional dancer, which seemed to be the only profession available for that, and also had glandular fever at 17 and went into chronic fatigue syndrome. So I did a zoology degree. My other love was zoology, and I wasn't interested the minute the animal was dead. I wanted that animal alive. I wanted to know about how it moved and its behavior and how it interacted. So I then went on and did a PhD, and halfway through, my back seized up. I was in the wrong place, and that took me to Alexander work. And my first teachers were Carrington teachers. So there was lots of lovely, slow unwinding, not very much talking. And would everybody like to mute at this point, please? And then we won't have an echo. That's it. Thank you. Great. Yeah, so it took me out of the crisis I was in, and it was very gentle. And then I started to go up and look for schools to train. And they all had long waiting lists. I discovered after a while Misha Magidov's school, who trained with McDonald. And that school was full of life. It was very vibrant. There was lots of play and exploration. People were having a go all the time, and it seemed a place of great freedom. And so I went to train there. And for those of you who know the McDonald style, it was full of strong pulls and lots of going up. And I put on half a stone of muscle in my first term on my back. Or I assumed I did, because I was gaining weight and everyone kept telling me I was slimmer. And after a while, I could see my back muscles. So something, it was strong work, it was vibrant work, it was confidence building. And I finished my training and started a practice. And within 6 months, my use had fallen apart, because I discovered none of my lovely teachers and trainers had really taught me how to look after myself. So that took me to Miss Goldie. Now, some of you, I think, won't know who Miss Goldie is. Azali, do you know who Miss Goldie is? No. She took her first lessons in 1927 with Alexander. And she was a Froebel teacher, which is a bit like Montessori. So she then was brought in to help in the small school. And she became, after a while, in charge of the small school that Alexander ran. And she was very close to Alexander. She worked alongside him right to the end of his life. People thought they were lovers. Who knows? But whatever, she was absolutely devoted to him. And she was very protective of his name. And when I went to her in 1990, she was 86, and she was a dragon. And she lost no time in telling me that I knew nothing and I was a mess. Except she had her own way of saying these things. She would say things like, or one of her favorite phrases, "You ask me that? And you call yourself a teacher of the Alexander technique? Why, Mr. Alexander would be turning in his grave to hear what you are asking in the name of his technique." Now, I would not say that to a new teacher. She was outrageous. Fortunately, I had learned along the way how to deflect insults. And I called it my magic raincoat. And because I realized her anger was actually not really to do with me. And so I listened for the message that was really mine. And that was, you're a mess. You know a lot less than you think you do. And I can sort you. And I thought, that's fine. So I bounced the insults, and which some people never learned to do, which is a pity. And a lot of people, I think, didn't study with her. So I was lucky I already had my raincoat. She set about changing things. So the first thing she did was she saw that my beautiful, straight, strong back was a fix. And she collapsed it. She let it go, released the tension of it, and I was back in a slump for the first time in 6 years, which was horrific. And I just knew I had to stay with it. It's like she stripped away everything I'd learned and started to rebuild it as she wanted. And it was very different. And I hadn't a clue what was going on. It was a real journey into the unknown. So she brought me to quiet, and she really helped me get in charge of my nervous system, brought me much quieter than any other teacher had done. And she taught me how then to come out of interfering with my body. She called it mind in the brain, bringing my mind to my brain. And only from a place of being out of my body could I then, with not over-involving in the body, could I then move. And on lesson 6, she challenged me because she said I hadn't begun to think for myself away from the lesson. I hadn't taken the lesson away and used it. And this was new to me. Nobody had ever suggested I did that. So I thought I needed to prove this, that I could do it. So I went home that night, and before picking my kettle up, I stopped. And I came to quiet like she'd taught me. And I came out of interfering with my body. And then I gave consent for my hand to move. And it moved in a completely different way. It did something so unfamiliar. And it felt its way into how heavy the kettle was, and exactly the right amount of muscles came into play to lift the kettle. And I realized I was in relationship to my kettle. And I call it my kettle moment. And it was a life changer, as it were. Because, as I discovered when I went back next week and told her, but she already knew that I'd done this. And this, she said, was what she wanted to teach me. Because this is what Alexander was really doing. She said, the training courses, and of course they're excellent. I'm not damning training courses. Without them, none of us would be here. We need those training courses. But she said the problem is they've turned the technique on its head. We are taught how to let the neck be free, let the head go forward and up, back, lengthen and widen, to bring in the primary control. And that then our job is to keep that going while we say, pick up our kettle. Whereas for her, by coming to quiet, you allow the body to move and discover that your neck frees and your head goes forward and up and your back lengthens and widens. So you're rediscovering primary control in every moment. Can you see that that's a reversal of the process? And I thought, now I begin to understand how Alexander discovered the technique, because I've been asking right from the beginning, and I'm sure many of the rest of you have, of you guys have too, how did Alexander develop this? Because after all, we all went trotting along to a teacher who put hands on us and showed us, but he didn't. And when I was very first visiting schools, I asked one of the trainers, how did Alexander discover this, develop it? And she said, oh, he was a very clever man. We can't do that. And I thought, fudge, she doesn't know. So somewhere along the line, this got a little bit buried. I think that's my understanding. And Golby wanted to get us to understand it again. So I worked with her for 4 years. And the other thing that was very different about her work was what she was doing with me physically. She was doing these incredibly strong pulls on me, taking my arm into different places that nobody had taken it before, twisting my shoulder around, doing strange things with my arms, my hands, very unfamiliar, doing procedures I'd not met before. And it brought in a tone and a strength and an integration that I hadn't met before. And again, her theme there was that I'd been taught to release. You know, when one's on the table, give me the weight of your arm, just release your arm. Now, release the torso forwards into monkey, and so on. And to her, release was collapse. She said, you know, it's all very nice and smooth and flowing and fluid and easy and so on, but it actually loses the tone in it. And she kept telling me I did not have the strength to be a teacher, which, considering I'd put on that half a stone of muscle, was quite a strange thing. But no, she showed me I hadn't got the strength. And she wanted this core integration. By the time she had me sitting up again, it took about 6 months. She'd rebuilt me in a very different way. And the way I understand it now is she'd rebuilt me from the inside out. She found those core muscles first and rebuilt me in a very much more integrated way. And it was all about holding tone. You know, if I released my shoulder, I got told off and told I was collapsing my back. She wanted torso to be really connected so that the arms really, shoulder blades really sat on top and so on. And she even described a certain amount of this in that language. And the result was I had a coordination I'd never had before. I could throw a ball in a straight line for our dog. He was very pleased, and actually get it a decent distance. Whereas before that, the ball could even go behind me. It would go anywhere, which was fairly embarrassing. I once missed a boy at school with a snowball 3 feet away. So she got those arms connected. And she brought in this strength and this tone. All of this brought me to a different place, and I embarked on a 30-year journey to say, what was she doing? Why was it different? To try and understand it and to try and work out how to communicate it to others, how to teach it to others. And of course, it took me to very, very many different places, that journey did. I started off by going back to John Hunter. Does anyone know his work? Yeah, he was actually the main assistant when I was training. And he had worked with Goldie, and that's why I went to Goldie, because I wanted what John had. And he then was running, after he started running workshops, having a look at this question. And he, by that time, also worked with Erica Whitaker. And I also then went to work with Erica. And she taught, again, how to get out of your own way by seeing across the room. And then she'd say, now walk, now stop interfering with your own body, stay out, let it draw you. Again, she was incredibly vital. Did anyone meet Erica? She was full of vitality, very dynamic work. I was already working with natural vision, so I was tuning into everything that was happening with eyes, because I realized during Goldie's work that actually it's vision and attention that lead the primary control. Anyone else twig to that one? Yes. And Peter Grunwald, I later found my way to Peter Grunwald, if anyone's worked with him, and he has discovered the same thing. I then discovered Bob Britton and functional anatomy, because anatomy always seemed very boring. I avoided it like anything when I was in zoology, because it just seemed bitty. You know, this muscle does this, and this one does this, and this one does this, and it doesn't join up. It doesn't mean anything. And Bob showed me functional anatomy, where everything joins up. And that's what is behind posture and use. Individual muscles can do, you know, lift a cup or something, but if everything else isn't working in coordinated harmony, we'd fall on the floor in a blob. So I went to Jessica Wolf. I was already doing natural breathing with John, and Jessica's done a great job bringing natural breathing back, more widely known in the technique. Has anyone worked with Jessica? Yeah, a few people. I discovered craniosacral therapy, and that introduced me to the world of tensegrity and fascia. The fact that everything is connected to everything, which is very much another part of the story. That led me to Thomas Myers and his myofascial trains. Does anyone know of them? Yeah, and a really good model of how the body is linked up along these various lines. And for those of you who've got my book, you'll know it's a real part of the book, this finding those lines. And the last one was Philip Shepherd. Has anyone come across his work? He's about deep embodiment. And he says, why are we still saying, I'm looking after my body? We are the body, and the whole body is intelligent. He's very much about getting one into the intelligence of the body and listening to it and talking with it, being it. And this was something that Goldie talked to me about, was that my knees needed to be intelligent. Alexander apparently would go around the first training course saying, you've got intelligent knees and you haven't got intelligent knees. And people were like, what? The whole body is intelligent. And embodiment is something that we don't tend to talk about in the technique. It's hugely important. So all these links brought in another piece of the Miss Goldie puzzle, as it were. But there was something still missing. Because I'd lost that strength over the years. I'd had first a big episode of chronic fatigue again in 1998 or thereabouts. And then in 2004, we moved to Ireland, and I went into an even bigger episode after that. And I was nearly bedbound and certainly housebound for over a year, and really lost a lot of strength. And there was a lot of reparative work to be done. I did some yoga, I did some swimming, but particularly worked with Miss Goldie's directions, thinking, you know, how will these kettle moments, will they at some point bring back in that vibrant strength? And they didn't. And it puzzled me. How do I get the strength without just getting it through yoga? And then I came across the work of Jando Masuero. Has anyone worked with him? He's a French teacher. And he was also asking, how did Alexander develop the technique? But he came from an engineering and a physics background and maths. And so he went the biomechanical route, which I find quite difficult I can't read their articles, it's all physics. But he really understood that side. And he was also interested in Alexander's reasoning process, the constructive guidance and control. And so he put together the pulls that he thinks Alexander must have done on himself. And we all know pull to the elbow and pull to the wrist, but there's also taking the back and taking the knees out in opposition to the back. And they're all antagonistic pulls. And Jando says he must have done them for himself to start with. And he thinks he actually used Delsart exercises as a basis for those, and discovered there were the hands on back of chair was out there, Whispered R was out there. He brought in these methods by which one brings in the antagonistic pulls. And he has discovered how to get people to do them for themselves. So my first lesson with him was online. All my lessons were online with him. And he got me doing a pull to the elbow, doing this immensely strong pull on myself, very precise. And it was weird. And my head was going, this isn't Alexander. And he was waiting for me to walk out, because most senior teachers had walked out on him, saying, this is not Alexander. And I didn't, because I suddenly realized that the precise pull he was getting me to do was exactly what Miss Goldie had been doing with me. And that remained true for nearly all the other pulls that he brought about in me, or got me doing for myself. They all started to inform me what Miss Goldie was doing, and to bring me a chance to do it for myself. And within a few months, within a few weeks, actually, I could do core strength stuff that my daughter had been trying to get me to do that I just couldn't. And within a few months, I was bouncing around the place like a 6-year-old. It was wonderful, particularly having been so disabled, but having cleared the ME, you know, it's this particular aspect of the work has really brought back the vitality and the elasticity, because it brings one back to one's full extension. So that was the missing piece. And by that time I was writing the book, and that was 4 years out of my life, with some lovely pupils who were brainstorming it all with me. We both individually, and we had groups of pupils working with me on Alexander and fitness, and working how to do it hands off. And so the book emerged. And then once the book went to the publisher, of course, COVID broke. I was going to take a rest. I didn't get a chance, because people needed to know how to work online. And we put the training to teach online courses together. So we then brainstormed it with about 150 teachers as well, before the book actually went to press, which was amazing. And so there we go. So the book is called The 12 Fundamentals of Integrated Movement. And here's the 12 fundamentals. you've got the physical fundamentals, which is what the standard fitness people only think in terms of. But you've also got the sensory fundamentals and the consciousness fundamentals. So the physical fundamentals, you've got that fascial continuity, which has to be in a dynamic balance. Our baseline organization, I think, is the fascia, connecting everything to everything. And then you've got these kinetic chains, myofascial chains, muscle groupings, whatever you call them, and they help to organize the body in relationship to gravity and other forces. And if you didn't have spirals, all the muscles, nearly all the muscles are in spiral linkages. And that's actually what brings in movement. So you put those three together and you get a functional body that will morph into movement, as I call it. It will just flow into movement like a puppet. But of course, it won't do anything without consciousness or a sensory awareness. And the sensory fundamentals, the only one they teach us at school is exteroception, sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. But that's only the sensing of the outside world. And we all know about proprioception, the sensing of where the body is in space, what the muscles are doing, what the joints are doing, that internal sensing of the body, of its muscles and movements and joints. And then the third one that even we don't talk very much about is interoception. And that's our primary drives, without which nobody ever moves. You move because you're hungry, you're thirsty, you want to cuddle a friend, you want to get away from danger, you're sleeping and you're sleepy and you want to go to the sofa. So they give us our focus of intent at a deeper level than consciousness. And when you put those three together, you get spatial awareness, the relationship of the body in space to itself and to its environment. And then the third grouping is the consciousness. We have to have a calm nervous system. If we're not in a calm state, we're not self-aware, and we're not willing to go into the unknown. We're not willing to let something unfamiliar happen. So the first thing Goldie did was brought me to quiet, and it's what all of us need to do with our pupils, is bring them to this quiet, calm place, without which we can't really make a profound change. And the more profoundly we can bring them to calm, the more we can invite change to happen. And then this one, which Goldie introduced me to, mind in the brain. But if one is over-involved with the body, you're all tangled up. You've got to separate the thinking process from the physical process, even though we are a psychophysical unity. At another level, it's separate. It's a paradox. And we also, even though we've got that separation, we need embodiment and embodied intelligence so that we can hear those internal drives and hear what we feel at an instinctive or an intuitive level. And when you put those three together, we can make an embodied conscious choice that gives us a focus of intent. We can be very clear. Right now, I am walking to the fridge to get the cheese. And that gives the focus of movement. And when we put those three together, then we get an integrated movement that's in relation to life. A kettle moment where we are moving like the cat stalking a mouse. The sight of the mouse draws the movement out of the cat. The cat isn't thinking, oh, I'll move this paw and then this paw. It's just watching that mouse, and the movement is drawn out of it. So, anyone like to ask any questions from there? I've thrown a lot at you there. This really, some of which may be familiar and some of which may be unfamiliar. So, Julia.
Yes, thank you, Penelope, for that. That was a great background. I wonder if you could speak a little more specifically or explanatorily about this difference in the pulls that Miss Goldie gave you. You were speaking about the elbows maybe down and away, like when we have hands on back of chair. How was that different from the way, let's say, Misha taught you?
Right. Well, I think let's start by a little game that I developed after working with Goldie. Oh, Joanna, you've made it. Good, good. Just lift a shoulder. And I want you to think the phrase that you would normally use to put it down. I do less with my shoulder. I let my shoulder be free. Just think that phrase and then let the shoulder go. And just notice how that is. And now I want you to pick it up again. And this time we're going to think the thought, but we're not going to do a movement. So you're going to think, I do less with my shoulder. I can 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 do less with my shoulder. And let the body rearrange it for you. I can do less with my shoulder. Just being aware that something wants to happen and give it consent to happen, but you are not helping. I can do less with my shoulder. 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 We're all about back. Can anyone notice the difference between this second way and the first way? What's different?
If I may, I think the first one was more like positioned, where you would like to be the shoulder, from my personal view. And the second, it was just going somewhere, but it feels okay.
Yes. Yes. So you didn't know where it was going the second.
Yeah, actually,
Nice.
yeah.
Thank you. Mariette. You're muted? Still muted?
Can you hear me now?
That's
Yes.
good. Yes.
I had the feeling that there was very much more space was there, a bit like opening up in the shoulder, but in the inner shoulder, so in the body.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Inner space. Lovely. Brilliant. Thank you. Michelle, did you have a hand up there? No. Anybody else like to comment? Anyone notice the rest of the body? Svenja.
Yeah, what I noticed in myself was that in the first time round, it was really still my brain leading. And whereas the second time around, it was much more my shoulder.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
the brain wasn't kind of no longer in charge. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And was it just the shoulder?
No, it was definitely, well, the shoulder blade, the back, the spine, it was much more the neck, it was like much more radiating out.
Ah, yes. So it was a bigger organization going on than just a release of the shoulder. Yeah. Anyone else noticed that there was more happening? Yes. Michelle?
I felt that my shoulder connected into my body in a way that was very structurally integrated, as opposed to plopping down in some place before and it was isolated.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Did anyone notice their breathing change? Yeah. Yeah. Anyone notice the other shoulder was involved as well? So, yeah. So, Julia.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the second way made greater demands on my ability to be patient and stay with the sensations. And because of that, I think it created a more global awareness of what was happening. But correct me if I'm wrong, are you suggesting that we can bypass the directions?
Yes and no. What we've just done, bypass directions, but it illustrates what Goldie was doing. When I was working with Goldie, actually, she stopped me using directions. And because having been at a McDonald's school, we were directing up furiously all the time and, you know, really rather overdoing it because we didn't understand. And so she just stopped me doing that. And so I learned that when she said, now you give your directions, I just thought nothing and came present to the room. And that seemed to get the brownie points and seemed to make things work. So I stayed with that, just letting the body reorganize itself for a long time, and then slowly brought directions back in from a much more non-doing place. And Jando's work absolutely uses directions. But I think we have to understand this. We have to be able to let something self-organize in order to be able to use his directions without just going into a, you know, whamming things around, because it's very easy to overdo with his work. So I very much focus, you know, discovering how the body will self-organize to start with, and then we can put his directions on top. And that again was a point Goldie made all the time, is that inhibition is primary, whereas on our training, to some extent, directions have been primary. And it's not. The inhibition has to come first, because it's back to what I was saying about the nervous system. You have to bring the nervous system to a place where it can then step in and be open to the unknown and be curious about its own process. And then it can actually do it for you. Anyone read Missy Vineyard's book, where she talks about my helper? Yeah, I mean, that's, again, the process she's talking about. Michaela, you have you're muted?
I mean, you just brought up Missy. I wouldn't have said that, but I am a trainee of Missy's. And when I did this very slowly, the second direction, I felt initiation in the muscle below the scapula, the subscapularis or something like this. But then I felt this widening without me directing. By me letting go of the shoulder pull, slowly, and it took a long time. It was really widening, and I think I learned this, well, somewhere along the way. I have a name in mind, but I'm not sure. That the pulling in, right, is what we do when we pull shoulders together and up, and the natural direction is all up and out in this kind of. So I thought this was wonderful, that the direction happened without me directing. That I felt that very keenly.
Yes, it is what the body wants to do if we give it the chance, with, as Julia said, that patience and attention. And I remember being astonished myself when I discovered this when I was working with Goldie, that, you know, a response in the body wasn't a but actually happened over seconds, if not minutes. And, you know, who was it who said that it was Mariette who said that it then brings space from inside, you know, and Michaela, you named it as maybe the subscapularis coming into play. So, I mean, I presume you all know tensegrity structures. I mean, it's a symbolic representation of how the body works, that the bones are held in right relationship to each other by a balance of antagonistic forces in the elastic elements of the body. The muscles, the tendons, the ligaments are all forming a network that hold the bones in tensional relationship, and the bones are the compressive structures, and the myofascia is the elastic element, and between them they hold everything in a self-supporting structure. Because, as I say, if the shoulder weighs down on the back, Goldie would say, you know, that's collapsing the back. And what we've done is we've let go the integrity, that biotensegrity unit of the shoulder girdle. But if the respiratory system opens that up for itself in the torso, and then this also has its own integrated system, it's like each part of the body has its own integrity. Nothing is weighing on everything else. And then everything has its maximum expansion, because in this structure, nothing is over contracted. It can't be. It can't be overexpanded either. It all has to be in a balance of expansions. Jenny, I have a question.
Hi, Penelope.
Right.
I was wondering, like when I was first like not moving and waiting for the directions, there's a moment that I feel like I'm freezing. So I know that that's like there's like a patience involved in that, but I wonder whether I'm doing something to cause myself to freeze, or because there's just almost there's two voices speaking, as if like one is saying release and one is saying don't move. So how do you balance that?
Well, this particular game is a bit of a device to demonstrate something. And I did show it to John Hunter once, and he said, no, I don't like that because there's not enough movement in it. So it is very much a demonstration of how, but I think, you know, and in general, no, we don't want that frozen quality. We want something always to be dynamic. The breath is always moving in the body. If something freezes, we probably stop the breath. So maybe we could try it again sometime and, you know, keep the breath flowing, and then you possibly lose that frozen factor. I must play with that actually and see if that's true. So it's a bit of a device, this, but sometimes, you know, stopping has that quality and then something eases out. So I don't know, actually, it's an interesting question, and you're right. How does that sound?
I like that. I understand that kind of like playing with it and going with the flow and seeing what happens. Thank you for your thoughts.
Yes. But on the same level, actually, I mean, the freeze, it's part of the freeze is actually paying attention. You know, if you hear a bang, you'll freeze because you really come to a stop and you pay attention, and then you make a choice what to do. So, you know, freeze is a natural part of it's not just my God, I'm at the top of a ladder and I can't move and I'll need a fireman to lift me off. It's not necessarily that rabbit frozen in the headlight. It is also paying attention. So there may be that aspect to it too. I'm thinking aloud here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, the paying attention, because it is suddenly like a flashlight on myself.
Yeah.
And like not knowing where to go. That's
Yeah.
more what it feels like. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a nice piece of brainstorming. Yeah. So let's perhaps try a pull. Since this is what everybody wants to do, is say, what are these pulls doing? So if you want to stand up, would you like to do a pull? Yeah, so let's stand up. And we'll do pull to the elbow, because that's the one we all know. And it's one Alexander named. So my way of teaching it now is just to put a finger in the crook of your elbow and just, you know, find that free shoulder joint. So you can just push the elbow out and the lower arm just hangs. So here you've got a passive arm. And now, having found that, you're going to imagine a string. So you've got the passive arm and the arm is going out to the side. You're not letting it go up. You're making sure that it goes out but stays down from the shoulder. And you're also letting it rotate forwards in the shoulder joint, like that. So because so often our arms are like that. So we're just bringing that forward element into it. So having found that, just find a little string on your elbow, an imaginative string. And now we're going to let the string invite the elbow to make the pull for itself. And so what we're employing here is the triceps, which of course is at the back of the arm. You might feel a slight pull down the back of the arm. You might feel it up the front of the arm. And you might notice that it begins to go into the back, but you probably won't find that until we put in the other arm. So let's just try the other arm. Let's find that free arm first. With the lower arm just hanging down and it's coming out of the shoulder, and it's also got that slight forward rotation on it. And then find that string and let that string pull that elbow outwards, forwards and down. Now bring the other one in as well, outwards, forwards and down. And now just let your breathing happen. And just notice how the pull and the breathing work together, and what now changes in your breathing. And in particular, notice what happens, particularly if you put a little bit more of that forward element into the shoulder, into the elbows. So not into the shoulders, but into the elbows, because the elbows are acting as a lever on the back. How that then changes the breathing, and may even slightly change the angle of the torso itself. And bring it more upright, bring the back more into extension. Okay. So, oh, I didn't ask you to bounce before we start, but that was a pity. So let's try a bounce now and see how elastic it feels. We didn't do a comparison bounce, but to start with, does anyone notice nice elasticity there? So what do you notice in the back doing this pull? What do you notice? Anyone like to comment? Or anything else for that matter?
I noticed that being conscious of the breathing, how the breathing naturally moved the arms out, the inhale, and it was a wonderful feeling of connection, arms as part of the back.
Yes, yes, nice, thank you. Yeah, anyone else? Azeli, yes.
It felt like I was breathing quite a lot more deeply down into my lower abdomen.
Lovely. Yeah, super. So by opening this up, you actually freed up the whole connection down the torso. That's lovely, because so often we're sort of stuck here, aren't we? Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else? Michaela?
Just the back widening, really getting a kind of a surface image of my lungs in the back.
Yes, yes. And of course, 70% of the lungs are in the back. And most of us are slightly like that and slowly overusing the front. Yes. And that subscapularis still coming into play, I guess. Yeah. Thank you. Somebody else have a hand up? Anyone else like to comment on this? Marion, how are you finding that? You're muted.
I wanted to rotate my elbow, and it was as though I wanted to get out of a strain that I was putting on myself. It's like I wanted to escape that strain, but if I stayed with it, my sensory mechanism became very acute about how the parts were relating to each other and being asked to change. So for me, it was a bit of an artificial I was going to say a vice I was putting on myself, but I can see where it was giving me a lot of information.
Yes.
So, yeah, but I am not sure about it. For me, it reminded me of a kind of strain that I used to put on myself in training courses where everything was overextended. So for me, that was a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's very interesting. We've only done one pull, and what one would do is actually balance it with a pull to the wrist and also a pull here. So we've got pulls going in 3 directions, because the more of the pulls one gets going in different dimensions, the more there's less chance for one pull to get overextended. And the whole thing come more into a balance. Delsart called it the law of dynamic wealth. The more gestures there are, the more rich it is. One line alone can create imbalance.
Yeah.
And that's particularly important when working with people who are hypermobile, that one pull can pull them out of balance, whereas when one gets all the pulls going, it actually works all the extensors together. And the strain that we're feeling is not actually an overdoing. If the angles are right, it's just pulling out tight fascia so that things can actually come more into balance. And my own experience of it was I felt like a guardsman for a week. I felt so stiff doing them. And then it normalized. And something just came into a new relationship. And after that, it was like my body saying, oh, wow, actually, this is where I really want to be. So, you know, it's interesting to stay with these, but I don't get people to hold them too long. I get them to breathe with them and pulse into them so that we're not fixing into them, because that, again, doesn't help. One wants to breathe into them and let them go, and then re-engage them and let them go, and let those strains sort themselves out. And Jando feels that part of the strain sense is actually faulty sensory perception, that we're just not used to them being pulled at that angle in that plane, which is an interesting thought that I'm still playing with. How does that sound, Marion?
I loved it when you said that eventually the body will take over. It will use that information and adapt it. I think it does that. I think I do that.
Yeah,
now,
right. Yeah, and my goal is that then these directions will come about when we do the quiet kettle moments, as it were. That the body, the pulls are a device in a sense. They are a therapeutic element that helping the body to join up again, helping those deep tensions that are, you know, cutting us into parts, helping it to join up, and then it will integrate itself. Yeah. Dino.
How to put it into words? Like, I found it really energizing, surprisingly. Also a bit this dilemma of, okay, I'm doing something, and I go into this almost form, and then within that, like not holding it, but breathing. I don't know how to describe it, but engaging, letting go, engaging, letting go, something like this. And then it felt also, now my voice is really like different than it was before we started here. I don't know, it felt like parts starting to connect, and it went much further also up into the neck and down into the back. Yeah, very interesting.
Lovely. And you've done these with me before, I think, haven't you?
Right, I did this in your other course, but it was somehow much stronger now, because maybe we did it a bit more subtle, or it's always easier if it's talked through and we take a moment to do it together and so.
Yeah, it's different now. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jutta. It's nice to see you. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I also wanted to say I will drop out in a few minutes because I have another appointment.
Okay.
I don't know how long you plan.
It's fine. We'll be going for another 15 minutes or so. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I can stay until the end.
So, Gail, I'm more balanced on my feet. That's nice. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of quite different stuff, as you're gathering, that I learned from Miss Goldie. And as I say, for those who've got the book, they know the size of it. And for those who haven't, it's a big book, and there's 200 explorations in there. And this isn't a book to read in an evening. And that's why we formed the book study club, to work through it in a group. And so we're forming a new group now. Some of you have already signed up, which is lovely. And it starts on not this Monday coming, but the next Monday, Monday the 3rd. And the seminars for it will be on Monday afternoons at 2:00 UK time, whatever that is for where you are around the world. That's 9:00 New York time, and 6 in the morning for those of you in the California, but you know, some people can get up early. Thank you, Gail. I'm now surprised by the magnitude of effect from such a simple movement. That's right. I mean, it's the precision of these pulls. One has to be very precise in them. The anatomy is all. And we talk a lot about the anatomy to make sure they are precise. Because once they're precise, you can put a lot of work through them and you're not doing too much, which is interesting. But we'll park that. So yes, we work systematically through the book together. We meet every 2 weeks. And everybody has a study partner to work with. And the idea is that for each session, we don't even work through a whole chapter in a session. It might be half a chapter or even a third of a chapter because they're pretty dense. And so you read the pages, maybe 5 to 10 pages, play with the explorations, get together with your practice partner, your study buddy, and have a go together. And one of you plays teacher and the other plays pupil. And so the one who's playing teacher gets all sorts of advantages from this because you learn to verbalize, you learn to vocalize the work. Most of us did the trainings where, you know, we put hands on and we felt our way, and every so often we gave the pupil of instruction, but mostly it was kinesthetic. And when you work online and when you work with conscious constructive control, you have to be very clear what you're asking the pupil to do. And for that, you really have to observe. And Erica Whitaker was really keen to tell us, Alexander never put hands on somebody without really observing them. He was always watching with his eyes and wondering, asking himself, where are my hands needed? What is needed in this moment? And so you're observing and asking what's needed in this moment, and then finding the words to bring your pupil into that experience. And that is a whole discipline in itself, and it's really valuable. And then when you've managed that, and of course, to start with, you use the words from the book, but you're paying attention to which words work, how your pupil responds to which. It's a very, very focused process. And then you're getting the pupil to feed back to you. You know, what just happened? And, you know, when you do something nice with a pupil's neck and you say, how was that? And they go, yes, tell me more. Nice. Yes, come on, tell me more. What happened? Oh, my neck lengthened. Ah. And when pupils can verbalize their process in that way, it again really strengthens their learning. So this is, I think, is something that they weren't doing 100 years ago at all, or even 70 years ago. And I think it's a very valuable thing that I know we're much more likely to do, that much more engages the pupil in their own process. And online, of course, it's essential that the pupil feeds back to you what is happening for them. So, and you have to be working on yourself, because by working on yourself, you really know what's going on for your pupil. So you'll be learning to work online with this as well, which is, as I say, a useful skill to have. How you then take it into your own practice is up to you. And people find it then changes their and really strengthens their hands-on practice, if that's how you're still working with pupils. You might like to do more hands-off work with pupils in the room. You know, you've then got a whole raft of skills that you're building up through this. So that's the study exchange. And then we all get together as a group and we discuss what happened for people, what problems, and I guide everybody through the explorations. We work through them together in the session as well, really to clarify that it's understood. And people come up with interesting insights, like happened today with Jenny, and one goes, aha, and new insights emerge. So it's really a crucible for all of us as well. And I'm taking notes as well when something amazing happens. And one day there'll be a second edition of the book, perhaps, and I'll get to share some of them. And there's also a Facebook group for those who like Facebook, where people can, again, very often put up problems with pupils, but we also discuss problems with pupils in the group. You know, somebody says, oh, I've got a pupil with this problem, and we brainstorm together how to work out how to use the method to help them. And so it's a very dynamic process. It becomes a very bonded group. It's a very safe space to explore and to play around and there is no wrong. There never is wrong, of course. There's just going into the unknown and experiencing and exploring. I keep it cheap. I keep the price right down. It's just €25 a month rather than an upfront fee. I made it a subscription payment, so it's a drip feed. And also because I don't know with any group how long it will take to work through the entire book. It's taking a bit over a year with the groups that are going at the moment, because they're wanting to take it slowly. So they really get time to digest each piece before they move on. And if needed, we just go back and check things over. So they're really building it in their bodies as we progress. And the groups have been doing it now for 9 months to a year. They look so different, and they're very often sorting deep problems that are, they haven't ever got at before. There's great things happening, and for their pupils. Dino.
So my issue is I don't have your book, and I'm in Berlin. And I looked at the website, and I believe it's only possible to order it from the US, correct?
No, you can get it from Amazon. If you're in Germany, actually the best place to get it is from Amazon because of Brexit. Before Brexit, one could, the publisher could easily send to Germany. And now it's just become a minefield. So the publisher is saying, get it from Amazon Germany.
From Amazon Germany. So
yeah.
it would arrive by the 3rd of October.
Or from Amazon UK. I don't know, but I've certainly been told that German people should get it from Amazon. Yes. So, yeah, I mean, anyone who hasn't got a copy of the book, and if it hasn't arrived by the 3rd, as long as I know you've ordered a copy, I'll give you PDFs of the first chapters until your book arrives.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
I've done that before. And we do have the German edition coming out sometime in the autumn, but it probably won't be till later in the autumn. So
I want the English.
Want the English one anyway. Michelle.
Could you address what to do if you're not available during that time on Monday, but I still want to be part of things?
Yes, and you can, because all sessions are recorded, and you'll still have your study buddy. And there's quite a lot of people who have, they do their exchange with their study buddy every week. They watch the recordings. From time to time, they send me an email to clarify things, or they put a post on the Facebook group, so they can always ask questions. And they just work it. I mean, there are people in Australia who I've never met because it's the wrong time of day completely, and Korea and Japan likewise. So not a problem.
So you would meet with your study buddy prior to the group on Monday? Is that correct?
That's right, except not for the very first one, because we'll sort study buddies on the very first meeting. We'll sort study buddies, and we'll talk through chapter 2, which doesn't have any explorations in it. So,
and how long do you meet with? What is the prescribed time for meeting with your buddy?
Well,
or there isn't one.
We suggest an hour, but it's really up to people. And people, different partnerships find different ways of working as well. I think some people meet fortnightly, some people meet weekly. There's one pair of men who meet for a short time every day, which I just think, that's amazing. But that's nobody else does that. But, people find their own ways of working. And sometimes some partners get behind a bit, and that's not a problem because they can work from the recordings. It's always okay to come to the sessions, whether you're behind or whether you're up to date, and ask questions and join in. So, it's very fluid. And how does that sound? And there was somebody else who had a hand up as well, I think. Yes, Mariette.
Yes, I just wanted to tell Dino that I ordered the book at Amazon Germany, and it arrived to Luxembourg. I ordered it in Berlin when we were at the Congress on Saturday, and I got it for Tuesday when I came back. So it only takes a few days.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank
you.
Yeah,
thank you. I just looked it up also on Amazon. It says it would arrive by the 26th of September. I just missed that piece of information when I looked on your website.
There you go. That's easy. Yes, good. Yes, and the price, did I say? It's 25 a month, €25 a month. And anyone who's hard up and can't afford that, you can also, there's a helping hand price of €20 a month. So, and there's no upfront commitment. So if you're not so sure, you can jump in and give it a go. And if at some point you find this isn't for me, or life becomes overwhelming because, you know, somebody's had a baby or something, then, you know, and you need to drop out, that's not a problem either. So most people stay with it, which is just wonderful. But obviously for some people, life happens. Joanna, hello.
No, I just wondered how long are the sessions on Monday? So you start at 2 o'clock.
Yes, they're an hour and a half.
1 hour and a half?
Yes, yes. So
Okay.
they go until 3:30. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes 10 minutes over, but because we get wild. Yes, thank you. But yes, an hour and a half is the official time. Yeah. Any other questions? So
Yeah,
mhm.
can I just ask how is it for people that are not Alexander Technique trained, which I'm not?
Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. Now you have a choice because you are already a therapist. People who are pupils, Gail, for instance, if I can say this, her teacher Valentin is already in one of the first clubs, and so she'll be working with him as a practice pupil. So he's going to be practicing his skills on Gail, and you will get the advantage of it. And so people who are pupils can, somebody might like to take a practice pupil because it's a really valuable way of strengthening your understanding of the work. And it's good to be able to practice it on a guinea pig before you go out on paying pupils. And, you know, some people can jump in straight away with paying pupils, and some people like a guinea pig pupil first. Since you are a therapist, you might like to play it as a teacher yourself, have a go at doing that. So I think I'd leave that one up to you. If we fixed you up with a teacher, and then you can work out which way works for you, because you do already have that experience. Yeah. Okay. Michelle.
Another question. How soon after the Monday meeting do you send out the recording?
Oh, that evening, straight away.
That evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm someone who always has a to-do list longer than my arm, and so I try and get things done straight away because otherwise they just. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Marion, thank you.
Can we have pay for a private session with you too if there's something we want to look at more intimately?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, some people do that.
How do we do that?
Oh, you just send me an email, and we fix up a time to work. Yes.
Is it every Monday of the month, or?
The group meets every other Monday.
I thought.
Yes, that magic English word fortnight that I try and not use because foreigners don't know it. Fortnight, it means 14 nights. It's an old English word, 14 nights. So if I say fortnight, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, they're every 2 weeks, because that gives you time. And then we take another 2 weeks at Christmas and maybe a week at Easter and a week in August, and we organize that as we go. But in general, we keep going.
And how do we get assigned a buddy?
In the first meeting, we'll assign buddies in the first meeting, and then if your buddy doesn't work out, you send me an email and we send a message to everybody saying this one hasn't worked out. Can we do a shift around? And it works. We get there. Yeah. And we try and find somebody who's in your time zone, who you can work with, and preferably in your own language and all that. So we match people up. Yeah. And it's fun. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, Alvina, you okay there?
Yes, I'm okay. And I would really like to start also try some other teachers to join, because I think the background of already being a teacher would help.
Yes.
Maybe also making this more clear, the confusion sometimes, probably also when I read some of the book already. And I'm wondering maybe for how you would supply for a study pupil.
Yes.
How would that be? Because
yes, so we have some pupils here who might need a practice teacher, and if there isn't one, ask your cousin, your neighbor, your because it's which is what people were doing in the online training teaching that I was doing during COVID, because we didn't have pupils on that, and so people were finding somebody who was hard up or to use as a practice pupil as well, and it was very valuable.
So that's also preferably online.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. You can practice with somebody in the flesh. That's now a possibility. It wasn't during the COVID lockdown. We were all forced into online, and it was very interesting discipline. So even if you work in person, my suggestion would be to play with doing it hands off, at least some of the time, and see, what you discover, because there's a discipline in that makes you think. When I was first taking my hands off, I became so aware that I would, my pupil would arrive in the room, stand in front of the chair, and I just sort of, do that without thinking. And it's like, no, hang on, what am I doing? What's the intent here? Take hands off, stop and have a look. What does this pupil actually need? Actually to make oneself stop and think first is very much what, Goldie and Erica Whitaker wanted of us. And they said, Marjorie Barlow actually in one of her books says, don't maul the pupil around. It's become too hands-on. So it's just finding a balance in that. And I love hands-on work, don't we all? But it's finding the balance in it. Apparently Alexander said, put hands on as little as possible, which I haven't heard before. Marjorie Barlow again writes that one. So, I'm not telling anyone how to work.
No. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aylett, hello. Are you there? You appeared for a minute and then disappeared. Yeah. So, hello. Do you have any questions?
Actually, I just joined lately, so I, out of curiosity, but I missed, I think, quite the important part.
Yes,
so I will catch up.
Yes, I think you were an hour late, so that you'll get the recording in a bit. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Any final questions before we close? Anyone we haven't heard from? Martina? Okay? Yes, Marion.
I have the wrong hand, but is this our group that we're meeting now? Is this our club?
No.
These are just. This is just an introductory to
That's
your.
right. Yes. So once this finishes, I will be downloading the recording and sending you out the link to it. And I'll also include the link to the landing page where you can sign up. So because the club material is hosted on a platform called Thinkific. Some of you might have come across it. It's one of the big platforms for hosting online courses. And that's where you sign up, is through Thinkific. And then there's a whole load of material, background material on there for support for those who want it. There's the anatomy pictures and anatomy challenges for those who want to do some coloring. I've done my own anatomy coloring book that's up there, which was great fun to create. And there's also quizzes to test yourself on how well you've understood the chapter, and questionnaires, which are a bit harder, and some supplementary material where things have developed and we've actually started to change things from the book, or more ideas have developed. There's a whole load of stuff in there now that's been added in over the year and a half we've been running this. So there's lots of fun stuff in there as well. But that's what you sign up on. And of course, you don't have to do any of that. It's an option, but it's just because I generate stuff. That's me. So yeah, any more questions? So you can have a look at that and jump straight in there and claim your place. And I really hope you will. Yeah, Michelle.
There's no limit in terms of enrollment?
Actually not. The last group started with 50 actually, which felt slightly overwhelming, but within a couple of weeks, quite a lot of the group had decided a lot of people only turned up for the first session knowing that they wouldn't be able to do the other sessions. So lots of people have actually worked behind the scenes, and the actual number on the screen is, it very quickly becomes somewhere between, around about 15. So it's a very manageable group. And, that's the way things work, isn't it? And we get the people who come to the seminars and the people who never do, who are working behind the scenes. So it can feel a bit overwhelming in the very first session, but it doesn't stay that way, if that's okay. Yeah, it's, I've noticed what's happened now. We've done 5 groups. This is the 5th group, and that's happened in each one. And then we get our core group who really sort of carries it for everybody else, which is lovely. Yeah. Any other questions? Svenja. Was that Svenja asking a question or waving goodbye? I think she might have been waving goodbye, actually. Right. Okay. Any final questions, or are we? Well, this has been lovely. It's been a great exploration. Gail, did you want to ask anything? Are you okay? Yeah, that's fine.
No, I'm all good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you so much for joining in this evening and for playing and exploring, because that's always the fun bit, and brainstorming and questioning. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.